Pre-Millennium Signs, video number 14. The good signs during the grape harvest, including the return of the lost 10 tribes. In this video, we're going to cover the good signs that are going to happen during the grape harvest. The grape harvest is the last period of time in between when Christ comes to the New Jerusalem until he comes to the Jews in Jerusalem. That period of time is what we're going to be focused on here. And if you remember Elder Gary Stevenson's talk from October of 2024, he talked about a decade never to be forgotten. So he identified that as from 2024 until 2034. And I don't think that is a coincidence. That is the time period here in which these two overlapping 7-year periods happen. We're going to focus here in on the grape harvest, which is from 2031 to 2034. There'll probably be 2 videos to do this simply because there's a lot of wonderful and blessed signs that happen during the grape harvest, because during this period when the Jews are experiencing great tribulations, in Zion there are millennial conditions. So sign number 8 here in the grape harvest is that rainbows disappear the year that Christ returns. Joseph Smith gives us a description of this. Joseph said, "I have asked the Lord concerning his coming. And while asking the Lord, he gave me a sign and said, in the days of Noah, I set a bow in the heavens as a sign and token that in any year that the bow should be seen, the Lord would not come, but there should be seed time and harvest during that year. But whenever you see the bow withdrawn, it shall be a token that there shall be famine, pestilence, and great distress among the nations, and that the coming of the Messiah is not far distant. But I will take the responsibility upon myself to prophesy in the name of the Lord that Christ will not come this year, as Father William Miller has prophesied. For we have seen the bow. And I also prophesy in the name of the Lord that Christ will not come in 40 years. And if God ever spoke by my mouth, he will not come in that length of time. Brethren, when you go home, write this down that it may be remembered." Here the prophet Joseph was speaking and saying that the rainbow is a sign for us to be able to know when we're close. And in the year that Christ returns, there will be no rainbows. This correlates with Revelations chapter 11:6. "These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will." This, of course, is a description of the power that those 2 witnesses we talked about in the last video have. And very interesting to note that they have power to shut the heavens, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. We know that their prophecy will be a long period of time, 160 days. And during that period of time, it sounds like the Lord is going to have them with the sealing power to shut the heavens. So that at least during a portion of that time when they're prophesying, there will be no rain. That, of course, will link with what Joseph Smith said. If there's no rain, there's no rainbows. So what is this sign? There are no rainbows the year that Christ returns. This may mean no rain or that clouds obscure direct sunlight. Either will make it very difficult to farm. As Christ appears at least 3 times as part of his second coming, this could happen in several different years. Why has this happened? The rainbow was a sign for Noah that God would not destroy the earth by flood, and its removal is a warning of the removal of protection. Where is this going to happen? This seems to be worldwide, but it could be regional, especially as during the grape harvest, Zion is going to be protected, and so it should have water. Who will be affected by this? All people where the rainbow doesn't appear that year. When? This could happen in the wheat harvest, ahead of Christ's coming to the New Jerusalem, and continue till his coming to the world, or simply on those years of his appearance. It's not specific. Let's go now to sign number 9. This is that Satan is bound in Zion. So we find this in 1 Nephi 22:26. It's in other places as well, but this idea is best laid out here. "And because of the righteousness of his people, Satan has no power, wherefore he cannot be loosed for the space of many years. For he hath no power over the hearts of the people, for they dwell in righteousness, and the Holy One of Israel reigneth." This is a period of time that Nephi is talking about, that he has seen in our days when Satan won't have any power to tempt. He won't have any power to do anything because of the righteousness of the people. This fits perfectly with the time period of the grape harvest, when Zion is going to be living in millennial conditions. The people will be so righteous during this time period that Satan won't have any power to tempt them. Now, Satan will still have power in other parts of the world. However, that power will be limited when Christ comes again to the Jews, and then again when he comes to the world. But rather than thinking of Satan's power being chained up all in one event, this is an event that happens in stages. Its first happening will be as the New Jerusalem and Zion are being built and cemented as Christ returns again to rule over Zion. And then we'll continue throughout the grape harvest as 144,000 are gathering people out during this time. And it will be perfected when Christ comes to the world and all of the telestial are destroyed. And there simply will not be anyone who is wicked enough for Satan to tempt them. Why will this happen? In Zion, many of those people are going to be translated, and that's where you're going to have these people who are unaffected by Satan. Where is this going to happen? In the New Jerusalem and Zion, also among the 144,000 as they go forth as missionaries. Who will this affect? Well, certainly those who are translated when, during the grape harvest and onward in Zion, then worldwide after Christ's second coming to the world. Now, we'll still have the ability to make choices. God is not going to take away our agency. Satan's power will be limited by the righteousness of the people in Zion and later the righteousness of the people worldwide. And that is not going to change until near the end of the 1,000 years when Satan, it says, is loosed for a little season. Sign number 10, angels gathering out those doing iniquity inside of Zion. What is this? As the gathering in of the elect to Zion happens, those who are doing iniquity within Zion are taken out. Why is this going to happen? God's not going to allow wickedness within Zion, and none will be able to secretly do iniquity and pollute it. Where will this happen? In the New Jerusalem and various Zion cities around the world. Who will this affect? Those who are offending the Spirit and doing iniquity within Zion. When will this happen? Once his kingdom is set up. This could be during the grape harvest. Let's read the scripture that talks about this in Matthew 13. In verse 40, as therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. I think this is really important for us to know, because as Latter-day Saints, we hope to be those people that President Nelson said are prepared and preparing the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ. We need to be the wheat. And very important that while the Lord gives a time for the wheat and the tares to grow together, once he gathered them into the barn, once he gathers them in the barn, which is the founding of the New Jerusalem and Zion, at that point he is very selective about who grows there within his barns. And in this case, you get an example of his angels being sent forth, because the angels will be able to judge righteously those who offend and take them out of the kingdom. So yes, outside of the kingdom, certainly there will be angels in the 144,000 who will be gathering out the elect and bringing them into the kingdom. But also within the kingdom, any of those who try to sneak in or maybe who decide to go back on their conversion will be gathered out. And so you're going to keep Zion and the New Jerusalem pure during this period. That's why the righteous are going to shine forth as the sun. They'll be thinking celestial. Let's go now to sign number 11. Here, a river and tree of life in the New Jerusalem. So this is interesting because this is something that I think many of us may know of as happening at the temple in the Old Jerusalem. But it also happens in the New Jerusalem. Let's read a little bit about this in Revelations 22, 1 through 2. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. This is a beautiful symbol here. The water of life, which is symbolic of Christ, is going to be personified in a pure river of water that will proceed forth out of the throne of God. And so the throne of God at this time will be in the New Jerusalem once Christ appears to the saints there during the grape harvest onward. And in the midst of the street of it, on either side of the river, there were the tree of life. So here you'll have the tree of life, much as we think of in the Garden of Eden, and we get a little description of these 12 manners of fruit that come every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. What a beautiful thing that this will be. And it's hard for us to imagine things like this, but the healing powers that God has put into natural things, pure water, like trees and organic things. Most of us know that, but we don't know it on this level yet because we've been living in a fallen, telestial world. But here in the New Jerusalem, the millennium is going to be starting, and it's going to be a terrestrial condition, just like the Garden of Eden, where you could have this tree of life, where it will be for the healing of the nations. Now, we don't know exactly what that is, this healing of the nation. If you click on the footnote for leaves, you go to Ezekiel 47:12. And by the river upon the bank thereof, and on the side and on that side shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof be consumed. It shall bring forth new fruit according to his months, because their waters they issued out of the sanctuary, and the fruit thereof shall be for meat, and the leaf thereof for medicine. This is in Ezekiel. This is a couple of chapters that are speaking about the temple in the Old Jerusalem. And there, this is going to happen after Christ comes to the Jews. But it's going to happen first in the New Jerusalem. And this is going to be something that's amazing. The Lord is going to use it for the purpose of blessing his people. Let's go now and look at what this is. It's a river of life and a tree of life springing up in the New Jerusalem, where the Garden of Eden once was. A parallel will happen in Jerusalem at the temple later. Why will this happen? This is part of the restoration of all things and meant to bless God's people and the nations. I don't know in further detail how it's going to bless the nations other than it's going to provide healing, but the restoration of all things, when you really think about it, think about all the things that God has put on the earth that are now not on the earth. Things like the tree of life, like this spring of pure water. Those things have gone away with the Garden of Eden, but they must be restored. And I think it's President Nelson who has helped me understand this, that the restoration is ongoing. At an earlier point in my life, I thought, well, the restoration was all completed. Everything we need till the millennium is here. Well, more things are coming, and this is one of those more things. So go through the scriptures on your own, and anytime you find something that the Lord instituted before, but which has been taken away now, you can be sure that that will be restored, at least for a time, as part of the restoration of all things that the Lord has promised. So where will this sign be? It'll be in the New Jerusalem. Who will it affect? The people of Zion first, then the nations. When will this happen? Well, it's not specific. This is after Christ appears in his temple in the New Jerusalem, I believe. But other than that, we don't know when exactly this will happen. One thing before I go on, I'm going to go back here to this diagram. Whenever you see in the diagram a bar, that bar means I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen because the scriptures really don't say a specific date. You kind of know when they happen in general, but there's not a specific time to them. So you'll look here and some of these signs that we're talking about. Here's the river and tree of life in New Jerusalem. I would assume that it would come sometime in here because it has to appear in a time when Zion and the New Jerusalem have been accepted by Christ and are pure to receive this. But it could come as late as Christ coming to the Jews or his coming to the world. I'm not exactly sure because it doesn't specify in the scriptures. So hence this bar covers this long time period here. So when there is a shorter bar like this, where it's kind of a box, this is where it's very specifically tied to a specific time period. And so I can be more specific about that. But that's a way to read this diagram, as we don't know exactly the day and the hour for a lot of these signs. All right, on to the 12th sign here. Whatever we ask is given, and all can speak in God's name. So I originally had these as two separate signs, but they really are tied together. And so I put them together in this. What is this? The faith and the righteousness of God's people in Zion allows them to each speak in God's name with authority and receive whatever they ask for. Why does this happen? These promises are actually available now on conditions of faith and righteousness, but they will become universal under millennial conditions to all who have faith in Christ. So this is going to be something that it may not happen all at once. It may happen slowly. As I said, some people already have this authority. They already have the power to ask and have it given. We know that from the Book of Mormon. Obviously, Nephi had that power, and that will come to all those promises unto the ends of the earth. So where is this going to happen? The first place of millennial conditions will be at the New Jerusalem and Zion cities. Who will this affect? The saints. When? As soon as the coming of Christ to the New Jerusalem, universally. However, as I said, this could happen to various individuals during the wheat harvest, perhaps even during the barley harvest. So this is something that's really, it's conditional upon our righteousness. The sanctifying trials that we go through in the barley and wheat harvest are what can help bring us to that earlier. And will bring everyone to that in the grape harvest who's in Zion and the New Jerusalem. This is something, like I said, that we should know about now and be working towards. Doctrine and Covenants, section 101. And in that day, whatsoever any man shall ask, it shall be given unto him. Notice what comes right after it. And in that day, Satan shall have no power to tempt any man. So it's that tie together of righteousness. This is why I think during the grape harvest is when we're going to see this, because Satan is going to begin to be bound at that time by the righteousness of the saints in the New Jerusalem and Zion. Let's go now to Isaiah 65, verse 24. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer them. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. And once again, you look at the verse right after it and you see the wolf and the lamb shall feed together. These are millennial conditions under which this happens. Those millennial conditions, we have to understand, start with our righteousness, with our being sanctified. Now let's go to Doctrine and Covenants, section 1, and let's read in verses 19 through 20. Even from Doctrine and Covenants 1. That was God's purpose, to get us all to that point. It's the same purpose that Moses had when he brought the children of Israel to Mount Sinai. He wanted them all to be able to speak as prophets, to be able to have the Spirit of the Lord poured out upon them to such a degree that every man could speak in the name of God and ask for whatsoever he would, and he wouldn't ask that which was amiss. So that didn't happen for the people of Moses. That unfortunately did not happen here during the early days of the church, and it hasn't really happened now. There will come a day when that will happen, and the Lord wants that to happen for each of us. It's simply a matter of each of us preparing ourselves, letting God prevail in our lives, which sometimes means letting him do a difficult work. Some of those times, those difficult works are very hard. Right now in my life, I'm going through one of those difficult times, and my family has gone through many of these difficult times since, I'd say, 2018 for us. And each of these difficult times, kind of like Lehi and Nephi in the wilderness, can sanctify us if we let God prevail through it. So let God prevail in your life. Let him bring you through those difficult times and let them be sanctifying times. And I promise you that he will comfort you and give you power to overcome fear and to be able to feel absolute peace and his love in your life, no matter what's going on around you. I can tell you that because I feel that now, even in the midst of my trial, of my family's trial, we can feel God's peace. And there's been many times in my life when I haven't felt that, when I've felt fearful during those times and overwhelmed. And it has been a change that has happened that the Lord will bring about as we really seek him and especially as we seek him in the scriptures. For me, that has come through repentance and really letting the Lord change me. That has come through seeking him diligently in the scriptures with real purpose. For me, that has come as I've given more time to the Lord in the temple. I think those three things can help you wherever you're at, be able to have the Lord's comfort and peace in your life. And it's part of the path to getting to whatever we ask is given, and that we can speak in God's name. So let's go now to this 13th sign. This is that Christ commands the sea and the lost 10 tribes to return. This is one of those miracles that President Nelson was talking about when he said some of the greatest miracles are coming between when he said that and the second coming of Christ. This is going to be one of those that makes us forget about things like the Lord parting the Red Sea, because this is going to be so miraculous and amazing, and it will be a wonderful testimony. Let's read about this in D&C 133, 20 through 27. All right, so starting in verse 20. For behold, he shall stand upon the Mount Olivet, and upon the mighty ocean, even the great deep, and upon the islands of the sea, and upon the land of Zion. So the he here is Jesus Christ, the bridegroom. We know about his coming to the Jews on the Mount of Olivet. We know about his coming to the land of Zion, the New Jerusalem, upon the mighty ocean, even the great deep. That's the interesting one. Let's keep that in mind and continue to read. And he shall utter his voice out of Zion, and he shall speak from Jerusalem, and his voice shall be heard among all people. And it shall be the voice as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder, which shall break down the mountains, and the valleys shall not be found. He shall command the great deep, and it shall be driven back into the north countries, and the islands shall become one land. So he is going to command the oceans here, the great deep, and it shall be driven back into the north countries. This is going to be the changing, the restoration of all things of the continents as they begin to come back together into one. But this is not the miraculous thing we're talking about here. This is just the precursor. As he commands the great deep to go into the north, there's a purpose for that among his children. Let's keep reading. And the land of Jerusalem and the land of Zion shall be turned back into their own place, and the earth shall be like as it was in the days before it was divided. And the Lord, even the Savior, shall stand in the midst of his people, and shall reign over all flesh, and they who are in the north countries. So now we're talking about a specific people, shall come in remembrance before the Lord, and their prophets shall hear his voice, and shall no longer stay themselves. And they shall smite the rocks, and the ice shall flow down at their presence, and an highway shall be cast up in the midst of the great deep. This is the story of the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes remnant. One of the things that has been most interesting to Bible scholars and to people in general who believe in God are these lost 10 tribes. And there's a lot of speculation because we don't know everything, but we do know some things. We do know here in Doctrine and Covenants 133 that the beginning of their coming is going to happen when Christ commands the oceans of the great deep to move into the north countries and the continents to begin coming back together, and that they will use this opportunity, they being the lost 10 tribes, to come with their prophets. They'll be led, and to cross the ocean. It's going to be dry, obviously, here. It's not going to be a small crossing like the Red Sea. This will be big, and they will journey to the New Jerusalem. Why is this going to happen? This is also part of the restoration of all things. The continents have to be restored over time to their pre-flood condition. But also the 10 tribes, the remnant that has stayed together over all these years, who saw Jesus Christ after he came to the Nephites and have a record of his dealings among them, they also must receive their temple blessings. And they haven't received them yet, and they're going to receive them, the Latter-day Saints. So they also must return to the temple. Where will this happen? In the midst of the North Atlantic or the North Pacific Ocean. So one of these places that's adjacent to the Americas. In those north countries, these lost 10 tribes will come from. Who? The prophets and the lost 10 tribes will hear this call. When? This is not specified, but it's got to be after the New Jerusalem has been founded. So let's move on to the big one now. This is the last one I'm going to cover in this video. This is the lost 10 tribes are guided by their prophets to the New Jerusalem. Wow, this is amazing stuff. And there's a lot of different ideas out there. And I want to say, first of all, I don't want to argue with other people about different interpretations of how this will happen, because I believe the Lord's pouring out his Spirit on many people. And the process that the Lord uses to teach us is typically line upon line. And one of my brothers or sisters may have a different understanding of that at this time than me, and that's perfectly fine. The Lord is going to bring us to a unity of understanding on these things at some point. But in the meantime, everyone's trying their best to understand this and to fill in the blanks where they can of how this is going to happen. And so I think it's wonderful that many people out there are thinking of this and are coming up with ideas of how this ties into the other signs. And I would not argue with them. I would simply say it's great that we think about this, and you should go into the scriptures for yourself and find your own understanding and inspiration on this. My understanding of this has grown over time, and I expect it will continue to do so. There's too many here to go over all at once, but I'm going to share with you the scriptures that I think are really powerful about this. And you can go in and read others. And if you find others or quotes, bring them to my attention. I would love to see them and add them to this. But let's start here with Jeremiah 31:6-14, because this is really a powerful story of what's happening in this journey. For there shall be a day that the watchman upon the Mount Ephraim shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to Zion, unto the Lord our God. So these watchmen here, these are their prophets that are going to guide them, just as we read earlier in the last sign about Christ speaking to the waters and calling upon the 10 tribes to return. These are the watchmen. And they're upon Mount Ephraim, and they shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to Zion, unto the Lord our God. What is this Mount Ephraim here? That, to me, sounds like the temple that Ephraim is going to build in the New Jerusalem. And so these watchmen could be prophets who are sent from among our apostles, among the Latter-day Saints. So it's quite possible that that ties in there. I'm not sure where these watchmen come from. They could be already living among the 10 tribes. We know that John the Revelator is sent to go and work among them. But we know that these will be prophets or apostles who are guiding them. And they're going to listen to the Lord's command, and they're going to command the 10 tribes to begin this journey thither. So what do we learn so far? This is a big group of people, a huge remnant that have been together. And it sounds like as they come from the north countries, the Lord is also going to be gathering the scattered of the lost tribes from other places, and they're going to gather together. Now, interesting, within this group are the blind and the lame, and women who are pregnant, and those who are even giving birth. So this is going to be a people that still have earthly trials to endure. They're not going to be super powerful and able to get rid of all of their diseases. They're not going to have no pain at childbirth. So they're going to be people, it sounds like, a lot like us, and they're going to come as a great group together. They shall come with weeping, and with supplication will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Now, among these lost 10 tribes are Ephraimites. Now, it's interesting, when you think of the 10 tribes as a group, you have to understand that when they were carried away into Assyria, and when they later escaped Assyria as it was destroyed and went northward, we don't know a whole lot about them from that point on. We do know a few things. We know, one, that a group of them stayed as a remnant, and this is a group we're reading about right here. They saw Christ when he appeared. After he appeared to the Nephites, he appeared to the lost tribes. So they saw Christ, and they bore record of him, and they have scriptures, and the Lord, it says, led them away to a place where we don't know. But also there were portions of these 10 tribes that spread out among all the nations. How do we know that? We know because the gathering that we've been doing over the last 200 years, peoples of the earth, has been gathering in, especially from Ephraim, but of these lost tribes that were scattered among the nations, especially in Europe, where we find a lot of the early church members. And they, from their patriarchal blessings, knew that they came from these lost tribes. So there's been a scattering of these lost tribes across the entire world. It's not just in Europe. There are lost tribes members who've been scattered to the farthest parts of Asia and Africa. And everywhere where these tribes have gone, the blood of Israel has been left as a blessing. And so there's going to be this simultaneous gathering of the scattered lost tribes as well as this remnant piece that's coming from the north country. So understand those two are happening at the same time. So let's continue reading. Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd doth his flock. For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob, and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. Therefore they shall come and sing in the height of Zion. So they're coming to the Zion cities, they're coming to the New Jerusalem, and shall flow together to the goodness of the Lord, for wheat and for wine and for oil and for the young of the flock and of the herd, and their soul shall be watered as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. So if you continue reading this in these last 3 verses, it talks about that they're happy, that they're not fearful. The Lord is going to protect them as they make this journey, this remnant, and those lost tribes scattered throughout the earth that are gathered by the 144,000. He's going to protect them, and they're going to make this journey in happiness. And when they get there, they're going to receive their temple blessings. So this is a beautiful story that Jeremiah tells of this coming of the remnant. Let's read now in Isaiah 51, 10 through 11, another perspective on this given by Isaiah. Art thou not it which hath dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, that hath made the depths of the sea a way for the ransom to pass over? So historically, we'd think of this as the Red Sea, but this will happen in the future. Isaiah speaks of every time. And so this drying up of the sea here and the making of the way for the ransom to pass over is also this remnant of the lost 10 tribes. Therefore, the redeemed of the Lord shall return to Zion and come singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their heads, and they shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. This will be a joyous and miraculous and amazing event that's going to happen. Now let's go to Doctrine and Covenants 133 and read verses 26 through 34. And they who are in the north countries shall come in remembrance before the Lord, and their prophets shall hear his voice, and shall no longer stay themselves, and they shall smite the rocks, and the ice shall flow down at their presence. And an highway shall be cast up in the midst of the great deep, and their enemies shall become a prey unto them. And in the barren deserts there shall come forth pools of living water, and the parched ground shall no longer be a thirsty land. And they shall bring forth their rich treasures unto the children of Ephraim, my servants. Let's stop here for a second. The rich treasures are their scriptures. They are going to bring these scriptures back, and we will have them among the church. And who are they going to bring them to? The children of Ephraim, my servants. These are the saints who are in the New Jerusalem and in Zion cities. And the boundaries of the everlasting hills shall tremble at their presence, and there shall they fall down and be crowned with glory, even in Zion, by the hands of the servants of the Lord, even the children of Ephraim. These are their temple blessings that they will receive. What a wonderful blessing that will be to help them go through the temple and to receive all of those blessings. For whatever reason that we do not know at this time, that remnant has not had the temple blessings in their fullness yet. And they're going to have to come here to receive that fullness. And they shall be filled with songs of everlasting joy. Behold, this is the blessing of the everlasting God upon the tribes of Israel, and the richer blessing upon the head of Ephraim and his fellows. The richer blessing comes upon us as we're able to do this temple service with them, as we're able to bless this remnant of the Lord and receive from them their rich treasures of scriptures. What a blessing and a miracle this is going to be. This is going to be something that we'll be talking about for the whole millennium, how powerful this will be. Let's go now to Jeremiah 16, 14 through 13, or 14 through 15. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, The Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he hath driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I give unto their fathers. So here this ties it all together. This is how miraculous and powerful this is going to be. This is going to stick in everyone's mind who has faith in Christ, even more than the miracles that happened with Moses in Egypt. And note here that both those who come from the land of the north and from all the lands where I have driven him. So it's not just the big remnant that comes. All the lost tribes scattered throughout the world are going to be gathered during this time by the 144,000. They're going to come to these Zion cities. But this is not their ultimate destination, because look at it says here, I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. So we know that they are not going to stay in the New Jerusalem forever, but the Lord is going to allow them to return as a restoration of all things back to the original land of Israel to settle where their fathers were. Wow, what an amazing circle that is going to be for them, having been cast out and taken out by Assyria anciently, and then gone through this entire journey where they had seen Christ at his first coming, when they've been hidden for all these years, when they're brought to cross across the great oceans and come to receive their temple blessings in America at the New Jerusalem, and then all the way back to the lands where their fathers came from. Wow, how powerful that is going to be. So let's read a couple of quotes now. These are the words of President Joseph Fielding Smith on this. He says, in fulfillment of the promise made through Isaiah and Jeremiah, they will have to receive the crowning blessings from their brother Ephraim, the firstborn in Israel. This is a book called The Way to Perfection. And President Joseph Fielding Smith goes on further and says, Judah also is to be gathered, but to Jerusalem and Palestine. The tribes of Israel, and these are the lost tribes here, will come to Zion, where they will be crowned, and eventually many of them will find their way back to the land of their inheritance, for so it has been promised. In this same book has a quote from Joseph Smith. It says, the prophet Joseph Smith looked forward to the great day when Israel would be gathered. He stated at a conference of the church held in June 1831 that John the Revelator was then among the 10 tribes of Israel who had been led away by Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, to prepare them for their return from their long dispersion. So here's a quote from Elder Orson F. Whitney about this. Why did they make so pointed a reference to the leading of the 10 tribes from the land of the north? This too after a general allusion to the gathering of Israel from the 4 parts of the earth. What need to particularize as to the 10 tribes if they were no longer a distinct people? And why do our articles of faith give these tribes a special mention? So what is this? This is the remnant of the lost 10 tribes who were hidden as a group by the Lord. They will come forth as a group led by prophets and will journey from the north countries to the New Jerusalem. Why? God has to gather all Israel and restore temple blessings to this branch of Ephraim that was hidden away. Where will this happen? In the north countries. Who will this affect? A large remnant of the lost 10 tribes. When? This could happen during the wheat or the grape harvest. It's not specified. I know that this is one of the exciting miracles that President Nelson was referencing when he said the greatest miracles were still yet to come. I'm grateful for the scriptures and the words of prophets, which give us hope about these terrible times and help us realize that they're not all terrible, that there's many wonderful and blessed things that are going to happen in the last years. I leave you my testimony that as you study the scriptures, you will find a testimony for yourself that they are true, that the Lord will inspire you and open to your mind other scriptures and lead you to other understandings so that you can better understand what's going to happen, have greater faith when they do happen, and be prepared to meet his son, Jesus Christ, when he does come again. And I testify that he will come again here to the Americas, to the New Jerusalem that we will build. And it's my hope that each of us together can be there to meet him. And this is my prayer in Jesus' name, amen.